Welcome. My name is Oren Weinberg. I'm the CEO of JSTOR. And I'm sorry we are today discussing the Hebrew project in JSTOR, but we will speak in English because of our guest from JSTOR. So I hope that at the end of the day, some of you will learn a little bit of Hebrew, so you can check the archive later. I'm pleased to welcome you all here today in the publishing, the academic and library communities, to the National Library to learn about the opportunities presented to us by the collaborative initiative with JSTOR and publishers in Israel. First, I would like to express my appreciation to all those who made this partnership and the introductory gathering possible. First of all, to JSTOR, to Kevin, to Laura and Anne, who came for a really short time, very short time, just to be here and to make the relationship, the outreach to the publishers and libraries. To Hanadiv and the Planning and Budget Committee of the Council of Higher Education for their generous support for the project, and to Haifa University Library that was from the beginning part of this important project. And I would like to name especially two persons that one is not here, the Marakash, who really works on all the technical part of the project from Haifa, and he's working very closely with the publishers. And thanks also to Professor Hanan Adler and Professor Yaakov Barnei. He's not here, and Professor Kobi Metzer, that were part of the academic committee that selected the journals to be part of this project. And of course, to thank all the publishers that are here, some that are not here, that already agreed to participate in the project, and some that are still in the process of learning the details of the project. We hope that all of you would then come and jump on the train to provide much more Hebrew content to the Israeli research community, and of course to everybody who understands Hebrew around the world. The initiative is designed to create new opportunities for online scholarship, both research and teaching, through a digital platform for Hebrew academic journals. As part of the National Library renewal process, which places state-of-the-art technology and digital access at its core, we will provide open access to Hebrew scholarship for researchers throughout the world, as well as ensure digital preservation of the content for generations to come. The National Library mandate entailing the preservation of heritage and culture of the state of Israel and Jewish people, and opening digital access to its collection worldwide is reflected in the objectives of the JSTOR collaboration. This mandate and commitment motivates our decision to fully finance subscriptions of participating institutions in the future to further the goal of preservation and online delivery of Hebrew language scholarly journals. Thank you again for the interest and participation. I look forward to a day of informative and productive discussions with the prospect of long-term and mutually beneficial cooperation with this exciting project develops. I would like to invite now Ariel Weiss, who is the CEO of Hanadiv.
Thank you, Oren. I think it's Ibsen who said that genius in literature is when you read something and you say, I always knew it was like that, but I never knew how to express it. On some level, I have to say, I think of JSTOR in this way. It's hard to believe that JSTOR, but a mere about 15 years old, if I'm not mistaken. Somehow, scholarship went on in the years before JSTOR, but in the years since it's come on the scene, it's hard to imagine scholarship without JSTOR. And of course, we in Israel are very proud, I think rightly so, of our journal production in Hebrew. But that production had been accessible only to a very limited degree before JSTOR. This is an opportunity then to say, pay tribute to Kevin Guthrie, who for all his youth is a founding father of JSTOR, and I think it's a remarkable inspiration, which has a reach that's incredible. And without stealing anyone's thunder, I heard earlier that the data showing access to Hebrew journals that are now online already reflects use across the world, including in improbable places. That also is an interesting detail. I should also mention, I think first drew JSTOR to my attention when he persuaded us at Hanadiv that it would be a wonderful initiative to help bring JSTOR in its earlier form, before it had Hebrew journals, to the benefit of the Israeli academic community, to make it accessible. I think there are, when you look around, when you look around at matchups, at couples, at married couples, there are occasions when you say, this is just an obvious fit. There are occasions when you say it's hard to understand how these people get along. And there are occasions where you say this is an obvious fit, and yet it's obviously not entirely simple. So on the technical level, I think the marriage between JSTOR and the National Library perhaps hasn't always been entirely as smooth and as speedy as we would like, but it's nice, without carrying the metaphors too far, to see it coming to fruition. And I think it really is a very natural matchup, because the National Library clearly has a role, a fundamental role, in leading the availability of access to material, the widest possible availability of access to material, with all of the technical and intellectual property legal challenges that entails. So it's really very nice to be able, briefly, to celebrate what's been accomplished, and I hope to focus in the course of the discussions here on what may yet, on the platform of what's already been made available, be accomplished in the future. So thank you and congratulations.
That is extremely kind. I'm Kevin Guthrie, and first I want to thank Hanadiv. It's been I guess 5 or 6 years we've been working together and talking together, and it's just been fantastic for us both organizationally and for me personally to have an opportunity to be here in Israel and participate in this. And I'm personally very excited about the future with Hebrew journals coming online and the kinds of things that we can work on. I'd also like to echo the thanks Oren shared for Matat and also Haifa and obviously the National Library of Israel. What I'm going to do today is just to provide a little bit of context for what we're going to do today, because hold on one second.
Yeah, I'm old enough that I can't see.
I want to talk a little bit about the ITHAKA. I actually started up with JSTOR back in 1995, and now lead an organization that's called ITHAKA. And ITHAKA is named after a poem by Guthrie, which is from the takes up the story of the Odyssey and emphasizes the value of a journey and the value of the journey of returning home and appreciating what you learn along the way, and not necessarily just thinking about the destination. And the journey that we're on at ITHAKA is to try to help higher education make the best use of the technologies that are changing the world right now. And we saw this originally when we started up JSTOR back in 1995, that the digital technologies were going to change the way knowledge was disseminated. And we sort of first saw that through with JSTOR and the conversion of the back files of journals. But the broader mission that we were pursuing really was about how can technology help higher education over the long run. And in some senses, in the first decade working with JSTOR, we at some level, the success of JSTOR overshadowed this broader mission. How would technologies impact knowledge dissemination in higher education more broadly than just the digitization of journals? And so in 2004, we started up ITHAKA as a separate organization to sort of return to this broader mission of helping higher ed make the best use of technologies. But in 2009, after several years of working in ITHAKA and working sort of at the cutting edge of technology and its impact on higher ed, we decided to merge the organizations JSTOR and ITHAKA back together. And what we basically provide now are three services under this ITHAKA umbrella. One of them is called ITHAKA S&R, and through that we do a lot of research and provide consultative strategic guidance in these new areas, the sort of leading edge of where technology is impacting higher ed. The second organization is called Portico, and it's focused really on the born digital content and how to preserve the born digital content for the long run. And the third is JSTOR, which is the research platform that started out with a focus on the backlog of journals, and we'll hear a lot about that today. So I won't talk much about JSTOR since that's what we're going to do today, but I think one of the things to say is that those three services come together really to, when we think about this internally, the S&R part, what we call S&R, ITHAKA S&R, is sort of the front edge of thinking about where things are going and sharing what we're learning, either through publications or through strategic advisory services of one kind or another. And Portico and JSTOR are operational manifestations of what we're learning. So there are some times when you can publish and talk and provide advice that will move the world forward, move higher education forward. And there's sometimes when that's not enough. And there needs to be a service in order to lead change in the community, that just talking about it or providing advice or publishing isn't enough, and there needs to be services. So we see ITHAKA as having all these different pieces that it can think about what's happening in the future and then also operationalize it as a not-for-profit organization working for the benefit of higher education. So just a couple words about each of these entities, just so that you have a sense. I mentioned that Portico is really focused on the born digital content, and it was the first repository worldwide that was certified as a trustworthy archive, digital archive. These are just a few of the types of things that Portico has been involved with. One of the exciting initiatives that's underway right now is that we've entered into an agreement with the British Library, Portico has, where because of its responsibilities with legal deposit, the British Library is having to take on the journals that are published in the UK and archive them for the long run. And because Portico is already receiving many of those journals in digital form and normalizing them to a preservation standard, what Portico is going to do is take that feed and feed it back to the British Library, so the British Library can get normalized data without having to do that for all the different journals itself. So that process doesn't have to be repeated. So we've completed a pilot of that effort, and if all goes well, the legislation gets passed this spring, we'll go forward with that. And we think that could be a really great model for some other initiatives with national libraries around the world. So just to say that Portico is really focused on these issues around digital preservation, looking ahead to the future. I mentioned ITHAKA S&R. Just a couple words about the kind of work that we do there. A big part of our work over the last 4 or 5 years has been in the area of sustainability and long-term business planning for not-for-profit initiatives. We also have done a lot of work directly with libraries. One project that's pretty well known is a project between Cornell and Columbia to try to think of different ways to integrate their library services. It's so-called Too Cool. We've done a lot of focus on faculty behaviors, particularly in the United States, where we've surveyed US faculty every 3 years, and we have one survey out in the field right now. This is the scholarly practices, and we actually, this year for the first time, did that survey in the UK, so we're starting to internationalize that effort. Laura Brown, who's here, is going to be leading the JSTOR discussions, used to lead our S&R work and published a seminal paper several years ago about university publishing and university presses, and we do a lot of work with publishers still out of that. And then An area sort of on the cutting edge where we've been doing a lot of work in the last 2 to 3 years is in teaching and learning, and more specifically online learning. And we have published 3 different studies recently that have gotten a fair amount of attention. The first one was a rigorous side-by-side comparison of online learning systems, the adaptive online learning systems, and one specifically from Carnegie Mellon in statistics, where we compared the learning outcomes of students taking an online hybrid course with students taking a traditional course at the same time at a variety of public universities in the United States. That was released in May and showed that regardless of background, family background, socioeconomic status, or wealth, students did the same in the hybrid online course as they did in the traditional course. And even though that there was much less time spent by faculty in that interaction. So there's some controversy associated with that, but it was one of the very first academically rigorous studies comparing these two teaching and learning modes. The second study is a study that was led primarily, it was a group of people, but primarily by President Lawrence Bacow, from recently retired president at Tufts University and formerly the chancellor at MIT. He led a study that we did that was a qualitative study of the barriers to adoption of these types of online learning systems at traditional universities, mainly in the US. So he knew many people, interviewed many people. Bill Bowen, the former president of Princeton, and the Mellon Foundation also was active in both of these studies, interviewing senior administrators, deans, faculty, about these new technologies and what would be difficult about employing them or adopting them on university campuses. And that's a broad-based sort of overview study that we also released, published in the early summer. And then the third is just a couple of lectures that Bill Bowen delivered recently in mid-October at Stanford University. These are the Tanner lectures. It's an invited lecture series, and what Bill did is he's been studying costs in higher education for 2 to 3 decades, and was one of the first. He and Bill Baumel, an economist, published on what has come to be known as the cost disease, and so he's thought about costs and higher education leadership for, as I said, 3 decades. And the lectures think about that context over time, and then place technology within that context and start to think about does the use of interactive online learning technologies offer a change to how we think about the way teaching and learning is delivered and what it might mean for the long-term productivity in the sector. So those 2 talks were we've released and published on the ITHAKA website also. And they're getting a lot of discussion at the sort of highest level at president's offices around the university, particularly in the United States. So that gives you a sense, where we're working very much at ITHAKA on a variety of different things. So, the online learning represents, with all the attention that's going to that, and I don't know how much you see it here in Israel, but in the United States, the announcement of MIT and Harvard starting up there. The so-called MOOCs, massively open online courses, Stanford's activity with Coursera and Udacity spinning out of Stanford. This is just getting an enormous amount of attention, and faculty and administrators in the United States are all, and trustees are being pushed, hey, what are you doing in this area? What are you doing with MOOCs, and how quickly are you moving? We've done some serious work in this territory, so we're very much working to try to stay on that leading edge of the new technologies that are impacting higher ed, even as we continue to do work in areas that have and will continue to be important, like curriculum preservation and obviously JSTOR. One of the things that's so exciting about JSTOR now, with Laura leading it, and what we're doing is bringing this kind of dynamic, innovative, entrepreneurial attitude to JSTOR. It has only been 15, 16 years, but what happens in this world of digital technologies and networking is that you come up with something new, and it's wonderful and adds all kinds of value, and it's very exciting. And then, what seems like a couple months later, it's like a commodity, and it should be free, and it should, what is really very exciting one day, the next day is yesterday, and you have to keep rebuilding yourself. And this is as true of the libraries and publishing organizations that many of you work for. This sort of relentless need to keep moving up what we call the value stack. You have to keep adding more value in order to be really being innovative. So that's one of the exciting things about JSTOR now is this this reinvestment in becoming, at some level what we're really saying is the kind of transformative actions that we took in 1995, we need to keep doing that. If we're really delivering on our mission, we don't just keep doing the same thing over decade after decade, even if it's valuable. That's not having the transformative impact that we founded the organization to deliver from the very beginning. So you'll hear a lot about some of the new things that are going on at JSTOR to really make it totally a web-enabled organization, offering its value at the lowest cost possible and reaching the most people that it possibly can. I'll just close with one thought about that is, if I were here 15 years ago, and this is on this point of today's value being tomorrow's commodity, and I wanted to do a demo for you, I would have, we had many of these types of meetings where we would meet with publishers and libraries and talk about something new and exciting in JSTOR, and I would do a demonstration of JSTOR's amazing value. And Anne would have a copy of the 1898 American Historical Review, and I would hand it to one of you, and you would open it, and you'd read me a line, and I would type it in, and then I would do a search, and up would come a page, and it would be the same page that you had the book open to. And what I want to say is that when we used to do that, it was jaw-droppingly amazing. People would just be, ah. And of course now it's like nothing, billions and billions of pages, and we all laugh. But that's how the world has changed in a very, very short period of time. And so the kinds of things that we're doing now are to try to keep that sense of doing things that really change the world and that really bring knowledge and education to people all over the world. But to do that, you have to keep innovating. So ITHAKA is providing context, we hope, both for a JSTOR to keep being able to do that and for bringing the knowledge to people all around the world that help higher education institutions, publishers, libraries continue to be innovative in that way. So that's the sort of overall context. What we're going to try to do today is share a lot of information, but hopefully have a lot of time for questions and discussion, and I look forward to participating in that as well. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. This is my first time in Israel. I'm here for one day. Never do that again. I'm back and actually spend some time. But we're really happy to be here and to be part of this really exciting project. And just to get a sense, how many people here are librarians? Okay. And how many are publishers? It's about 50-50. How many people have used JSTOR before? So I'm preaching to the choir.
How many are libraries becoming publishers and publishers becoming libraries?
Right. So let me just, I'm going to talk a little bit about JSTOR. Some of this will be familiar to you and some of it may not be. As Kevin said, we're a not-for-profit service, and let me just start with that. We are not-for-profit. We started about 15 years ago, and Kevin was the founding inspiration along with Bill Bowen, who was the head of the Mellon Foundation. We are a collaborative service. This was built with libraries and with publishers and with faculty. So most of the content that's in JSTOR has been chosen carefully by librarians and by faculty, and most of the services that we've built have been built out of the needs that were expressed by the community. We serve 3 stakeholders the scholars and the researchers, the libraries themselves who serve those scholars and researchers, and the publishers who provide us our content. We actually started, if you see here, it says we were intent on increasing shelf space. That was the reason that that JSTOR began. It was Bill Bowen went into I think it was it the Denison Library, and he saw just rows and shelves and shelves of journals from the first issue on, and these journals basically were taking up shelf space, and nobody was using them. So the idea was, okay, digitize these things, digitize them really well, and then you can take them off the shelves, which is what JSTOR did. Now, two things happened. One was that the minute this stuff opened up, the scholars started pouring in because this stuff that nobody was looking at suddenly became really exciting. So that whole purpose of discovery and access became immediately just as important. Not more important, but just as important. And the second thing that happened was that libraries didn't take these things off the shelf. They didn't for many years. That is just starting to happen now in much bigger ways. I think the reality of this explosion of world scholarship has forced the issue of, do we build another building, or do we actually trust in the preservation of this kind of cloud service, of which JSTOR is a major part. So in the end, we've built something that we believe is sort of a value, a sort of a win-win-win for all of the stakeholders of which you all represent a major portion. Our content, we have now, we are basically an archival journal collection. We have 1,600 journals now that are online, and we have another 400 or so that we've signed and that are going to be coming online. We also host, for some of our publishers, we host their current issues. So in some cases you can get the entire run of the journal. Others, they set a sort of a moving wall so they can preserve their own business models for their current issues. And then at a certain point, their content moves into JSTOR. But we also have other kinds of content. We'll talk a little bit about that later. We are, in fact, trying to build a sort of a workbench for scholars with the content that they need, not just journals. We have over 900 publishers now, and this is a wide variety of participants. Many scholarly presses, university presses, scholarly societies, but also commercial presses. We have a very strong contingent of commercial presses. And for some of our content, libraries are actually the publishers. So we have special collections coming in from libraries that are on the JSTOR platform. And we'll talk about that a little bit. We cover more than 50 disciplines, mainly the humanities and social sciences, so economics, political science, literature, what this makes is a sort of a crossroads for interdisciplinary research. I mean, even we have a good complement of scientific literature, and has very strong usage because of the linkages between the different disciplines that you would think, okay, that's a whole other world, but actually it's a very integrated world on JSTOR. We have more than 8,000 institutions who subscribe to JSTOR. It is truly a global enterprise. And many of these are beyond the higher education community. So we have a number of governmental agencies subscribing. We have small research institutes. We have over 1,200 secondary schools, and this is a really growing area for us. So we have a more like a cradle-to-grave approach to these things. I wouldn't say cradle, but young. And we're fast approaching being in every country. Each year we add several more countries to the JSTOR participant list. So I can't remember how many there are altogether. Does anyone know? It's like 190 or something like that. So we're getting close. And one of the things we do is, one of our missions, the core mission, is to try and expand access. So we offer the JSTOR basic journal corpus in the developing world for very low cost or free. In Africa, all of JSTOR is free. And this is something that we will continue to do, and we believe that the expanding access is really one of our most important things. In addition to having a wide footprint in the world, we have an enormous usage base. Most institutions that you go into, if you ask what's their most heavily used digital resource, it would probably be JSTOR, at least in the top 2 or 3. So, so it's kind of seen as a utility on campuses, that you just assume that it's there. It's kind of the air that students and faculty breathe. We had over half a billion total accesses to the database in a year. Interestingly, you know, a lot of traffic comes in from the search engines now. People don't necessarily start their searches at the library. They'll search outside the library and they'll come in. And most of the aggregated databases are not a destination for anybody, but around 40% of users begin on JSTOR. So that is that's their destination search. More so for some disciplines than others. But it's a major discovery platform that we hope to build on that and make it as even more vital for people when they start their search there. We do have an enormous amount of traffic coming in from search engines. You can see about 150 million annual referrals, and that's something that we are thinking very hard about how to take. Many of these are authorized users, but many of them are not. They're not affiliated with the university, and this is a big challenge for us, is how do we help to spread scholarship beyond the affiliated researcher. And it's interesting, and this is something for those of you who are going to be joining with the Hebrew Project, for these current issue publishers who had been online for maybe a decade, some of them had their own platforms. When they put their stuff into JSTOR, the usage of that stuff, everything else staying the same, exploded. It's like sometimes it by over 100%, some of them over 300%. So it's just being in the JSTOR environment changed the way that the attention that they got for this and the usage that it got. Kevin mentioned that we sort of started out on the preservation front with this idea of shelf space. Doing preservation right is a huge mission for us. You'll see in the process of this how we go about acquiring the full runs of journals, the very pristine issues, how we digitize to the very highest standards, so it is an archival copy, that we actually have a fund around preservation to be sure that we can keep those digital copies in the formats as they migrate. And we actually have a big print repository where we can go back and get those items if we need to rescan them. And we have multiple, I think we have 3 data locations now. So we have sort of guarding against single points of failure. So preservation is a big part of our mission and a big part of what happens with your content. And it's done in collaboration with libraries too. I mean, libraries are still the most important preservation arm of scholarship. We're a partner with that. We are seen as an enormous value for libraries. What happens is that libraries invest in one of our collections, we have a certain charge for that, and we don't charge any more after that, but we keep adding every year this moving wall of content. So the value of what a subscription looks like just continues to go up. And you can see here that this was from the end of the completion of that collection in 1999. We've just been adding content over a decade. And you can see what happens from that is the cost just comes down and down and down. So for different size libraries, you're really approaching zero in cost per page. And that's really important to us that we not only are helping to save shelf space and make scholarship available, but doing it at a cost and a continually lowering cost for libraries. So that's just an introduction to the basic JSTOR. Kevin mentioned that we're doing lots of things now. We thought we'd take you quickly through some of these things that are the new initiatives we're working on. So the first one is that we have been eager to bring the book literature onto the platform. And for the last few years, I've been working with libraries and publishers to figure out the best way to do that. We had a big research program around it, and we're happy to say that just about 10 days ago, we launched this. And we now have scholarly books from over 30 university presses. It's the global representation of this, so presses in Europe and Australia, of course the United States, Canada, and UK. There are about 15,000 books now, and we're sort of being besieged right now by presses who want to sign up. We can't cope with the interest that we have from them. So we're expanding to try and do that. The idea behind this was that you know, if you look at the journal literature, it's kind of this giant river of scholarship. That's in the online world. That's where people go to find out what's happening. And then books has been sitting over to the side in print, kind of isolated, siloed. So what we wanted to do was bring the books into the JSTOR environment at this very deep level of linking. So you can be in a in a reference in a journal article and click on that reference and go straight into the book. You can be in a book and click on a reference and go straight back into the journal. So they're not just sitting over here, they're really sitting like this. And we've got 2 million book reviews in the corpus. So not only can you go straight to the references, but you can go to the reviews. So this idea of, for us, it's an experiment in whether the monograph, which has been slowly losing value and slowly sort of crowding out of library budgets, what happens when that's really revitalized? When you can bring those two sort of twin engines of scholarly output together. That's our goal. And so we even in the first few days that this came out, we just got so many tweets and Facebook likes and everything. This is just one example of the kind of enthusiastic response we've gotten. We also have a small but growing collection of primary source material on JSTOR. We have a collection of British historical pamphlets. We have a collection on the struggles for freedom in Africa. And the goal here is to make primary source material more discoverable and more useful to scholars. So the co-location of the primary source material with the journal and book literature is one of the things we're both experimenting with and think has some real value. And we're experimenting with it in a couple ways. And one is to sell, to create kind of discrete collections and then sell them at a low subscription rate. But another of them is to sort of experiment with some open access models. So libraries who have collections can put their collections into JSTOR, and we will host them and preserve them. At the same time, they might have much larger collections in that same space, and we will be pushing the people who are discovering on JSTOR these things back to the institutions that have them. So it can be both a place that people find things and a place that people come to the institutions that house them to discover more. So we're really excited about that. One of the new ones we're launching is something called JSTOR Plant Science. This is a huge collection of over 2 million pages. It contains now about 1.2 million specimens. So these are like the plant specimens that were brought to herbaria around the world in botanic gardens as the great explorations happened, and we've been digitizing those with help from the Mellon Foundation. So eventually, over the next few years, we will have like the kind of workbench for plant taxonomists. We also have much of the literature of that discovery, whether it's the explorers and their diaries. And so this we're very excited about, and we're as excited that we built this with over 270 institutions. So all the big botanic gardens and herbaria and natural history museums, and they function almost like their own sort of little consortium with their scholars to help us build this. We then invest in tools for this kind of content, all sorts of tools, and we deeply link it to the journal and book literature. So again, it's like a very integrated environment of discovery. And that's going to launch in April of next year. We are looking at doing 2 or 3 of these a year from now on. So we are thinking very hard about which areas we should be doing this in. Then access, as I said, is serving unaffiliated users is really important to us. We launched something called the Early Journal Content Program, where we made everything in the corpus that was public domain. We made it freely available for whatever uses any researcher had. This was over 500,000 articles, and you can see, we've already had over 6 million content accesses since we launched this program last year, and very exciting to scholars to be able to get at this stuff that they haven't been able to get at before. Again, on the same theme of expanding access, we have a pilot program that launched earlier in the spring, which we call Register and Read. We used to call it Front Door because, as I said, we had like 150 million of these requests coming in, these referrals coming in from Google, and we had to sort of say, no, you don't have access. So this is actually Kevin's initiative. He said, let's open the door to these people, find out a way to open the door to these people. So we kind of called it Front Door for a while, but now we call it Register and Read. And this is basically setting up the ability for people to register with us who do not have access to an institution, and add up to 3 articles on their reading shelf for 2 weeks, and they can keep refreshing those every 2 weeks. And we see this both as a way to get immediate gratification for people who want to find some of this content, but also as a way to start showing them other content on JSTOR by saying, do you know that there are these other articles you'd be interested in, and giving them ways to get at that content, that greater content. So I'll talk about that just in a minute. But This has been very successful for us so far. We've had 20 million page views, and we've had almost 200,000 articles shelved in the short time. We expect now, we only had 77 journals in the pilot. We expect to put in hundreds and hundreds more. Actually, that's going to launch next week. So we'll have a much bigger program for what we call our Register and Read. This is what it looks like when you register. You get access to the article. You can see that you can immediately start reading it. You can pay to download it, and it's a place where publishers can also promote their programs. So we're trying to give a chance to actually, for journal publishers, they can promote. Why don't you subscribe to our journal, or for societies, here's what our program looks like. So that's a Register and Read program. What we're looking for in the future, as I said, we want to keep expanding what we're doing with open access. We're probably going to be doing some thinking about open access journals and open access book programs. This thing we call JPass is there's a registered trademark now for us, and we want to be able to offer somebody who registered and got some free journal articles to be able to subscribe to all of JSTOR. So that's a big initiative that we're working on now, and that's for unaffiliated scholars. We're working on what the next generation of scholarship looks like. We know it's not necessarily going to be a journal article or a book. Could be a database it could be data connected to a journal article. It could be multimedia spaces, and we want to build the platform to be able to cope with not only those kinds of things for the journal publishers who are trying to expand what happens within their own journals, but also completely new kinds of content that are coming out of the academy. And for JSTOR to be a vital source for researchers, we know we need to be there. So we're making significant investments in the platform to be able to deal with all of that, and to be able to work with faculty working directly on JSTOR to build new things. So that's a big part of what our future looks like. And it's really important for us to continue to internationalize the content and participation. So as I said, we are signing up new institutions around the world. It's a big goal for us to get to 100% there. But also to bring foreign language content onto the platform. We see ourselves as a kind of a center of global exchange. And we think we can do more in that space to facilitate global communication around scholarship. So I have to say that you all are so important to us, because you're the first of the first case of bringing non-Roman languages onto JSTOR. We have a lot of Spanish and French and Italian journals, but we really don't have anything that's in non-Roman languages. And we don't have full collections like that of multidisciplinary content in non-Roman languages. So you all are leading the way for what we hope is a very big initiative for JSTOR moving forward. We feel like this is a shared mission that we have with libraries and publishers around this global exchange and around the preservation of the scholarly record, and doing it in a sustainable way. That's always been a really big part of JSTOR. How do you drive down costs but actually support yourself? And JSTOR started with a grant from the Mellon Foundation, but it's been self-sustaining for over a decade. And that's really important to us, is to find the models that make that possible. In keeping with the way JSTOR has been built, we are looking for only the best journals, and there's already been a lot of thinking about what that looks like in terms of Hebrew content. So as we model this with you, we model this for other countries. We've modeled this for other languages. It's very exciting. The plans for this are to digitize around 40 journals in Hebrew. To do that to the high standards, which we mentioned before, and to invest in the platform in order to be able to handle Hebrew, both in the functionality of in having the language itself on and the functionality of how you read. And the idea here is that that this will not only enhance the scholarship within Israel, but that this will make Hebrew content available around the world. Now, we've had a pilot going since 2010. Are the publishers of these journals in the room? Great. All right, good. So we've had 4 journals, and we've had libraries in the pilot that, you know, it's free. They're participating to help us think about this, and now we have over 180 institutions who are part of this pilot. And interestingly, there's a wide range. You find, like, you know, big research universities around the world that are part of the pilot, but you also find small colleges. And looking at the spread of this, JSTOR has 5 classifications of institutions, and they're pretty evenly distributed across this spread. So, and that's important to us, that we're driving all the way down, even to the small institutions, the availability of this scholarship. This is something we were surprised about when we started digging into the data, but there are, one would think that most of this usage would be happening in Israel, but in fact it's only a little over 30% that's happening in Israel. Fully 70% of this is happening outside Israel. So this idea of being in the utility on the research grid.
Israelis travel a lot.
But you know, I mean, interestingly enough, I'm not surprised to see that, you know, that the U.S. would have a lot of usage. But you're getting this, you know, in places like Africa and Australia. So it's quite exciting. Even for this small amount of content, with a small participation base, we're still getting over 11,000 uses per month of the pilot. So that's very promising too. And we did a survey of the users. How long ago was that, Ann?
It's ongoing.
It's ongoing, so we're still getting some of this. But we were really excited about some of the feedback we've gotten. You know, some people saying how much easier it made them their research. Others saying, come on, bring on more, which is why we're here. And some saying it's just, you know, this has changed what I can do as a researcher. So this is like, you know, this is what we're all in this for, and it's a very promising introduction to what's possible as we build this out. So that's a short introduction to JSTOR and to the pilot, and I guess unless there are any questions, Anne, are you up next?
No, Neta is up next.
Okay. Oh, did you have a question?
Yes. I would like you to explain the embargo policies of JSTOR. I know that there is an embargo
Yes,
policy.
this moving wall idea you're talking about, like when does how long is it that the current issues are?
Yes.
Are you going to talk about that?
Yes, I am, and then we can elaborate further. And maybe I'll answer your question in my talk, and if I don't, we can come back to it.
Very well.
Good.
Is the access to the Hebrew journal by institution only or by registered users?
By institution. So everyone in that institution has access.
The keywords are according to the English abstract or Hebrew keywords. Is there any translation? If one looks for a keyword, he can get also the Hebrew if he searches in English.
Can you answer that?
Sure. All of the text in every journal is, and hello. All of the text in every journal that we digitize is captured. So if a user searches in English and there is English in your journal, then that will appear. So you could limit your search to English language abstracts and you would get results from a Hebrew journal that had those. And the same would be true for people searching in Hebrew. Does that kind of help answer?
Yes.
Okay.
Just an quick answer about registered users. We're going to offer, except for the institution licensing, also registered users could be accessing the Hebrew Journal archive through the National Library portal. They have two criteria. One is that they have to be Israeli citizens and they are coming from the Israeli domain. Okay, so this is an addition to the institutional access point.
I'm not sure, let's
Okay, hello everybody. My name is Neta, Waisman, and I'm part of the Haifa team that works on the JSTOR journals here in Israel. Because English is not my first language, I will read from my notes and you will go with me. Okay, in this very short review, I would like to talk about our Haifa team, about our working processes, cooperation with other JSTOR teams, and some of the hurdles we had to overcome while working on this project. The process of choosing journals for this project was done a few years ago. The journals were chosen from a list of about 130 academic journals in Israel. An academic committee chose about 60 journals to be scanned for this project. JSTOR and the National Library are approaching now the publishers and asking them to sign up for an agreement for participation in this Israeli JSTOR project. First, I would like to say that we are 3 people working on this project in Haifa. Yair, who is not here today, Sharon, who is sitting here, and myself. All of us are librarians at the Haifa University Library, and all 3 of us have many other responsibilities as well. At these preliminary stages of the project, we can cope with the additional workload, but we anticipate that with time we will need to train some more librarians to assist us. Although we are an Israeli team working on Hebrew journals, our work here in Israel is in many ways a reflection of the work done at JSTOR's offices. In order to control our workflow, we divided our work processes to 4 major parts that are separated to smaller parts. I'm going to list them. The main parts are writing title histories, completing specific indexing guidelines, SIG, for each journal, collecting new, fresh, clean issues from the publishers and shipping them, and performing quality control, which has not been done yet. We're not at this stage. We perform each part according to JSTOR's sometimes very, very complex instructions. I see them laughing. And with the much appreciated cooperation of the team from JSTOR, especially Karen and John, who have been very helpful in guiding us through the 208 pages of the Hebrew Journal guidelines. Karen and John have done a wonderful job in giving us feedback, correcting our work, and answering all our questions. On April 212, we hosted in Haifa the Apex team. Apex is the vendor chosen to scan the journal issues. The actual scanning will take place in India, and a representative from India was also part of the group that came to Haifa. They were very keen to examine the list of Hebrew journals that were chosen to be scanned, and then spent 4 days working at the library. It was our impression that they didn't expect the Hebrew Journal project to pose such a challenge, and that they were surprised by the large number of unusual publishing styles they found here. Some of these were journals written in both Hebrew and English, journals with many different pagination schemes, and journals with changing reading orders, in which you read the Hebrew written part from right to left, and the English part from left to right. As a result of this visit, their recommendations and our input, the new guidelines the Hebrew guideline was revised, and a new guideline 3.0 was issued. After the visit and the issue of the new guideline, we started to work on journal title histories. What are title histories? Title histories should provide at-a-glance information about a journal. It should state all the factual data about the journal as a whole. We have now completed about 25 title histories, totaling about 250,000 pages to be scanned. In order to write these title histories, we look through each journal and collect the relevant data, such as ISSN information and changes in the ISSN, title information and whether the title changed at any point. We know the frequency of the journal, we know the publisher name or names. We count the total number of pages to be scanned in each journal, and we list the primary languages in the journal, as well as the extent of illustrations and so on. In addition to all that, we also search for information regarding each journal in other libraries' catalogs to find if there are other editions of this said journal. Does it continues in part another journal? Was it separated from another journal? Is it supplemented by another journal? Or is it another edition of another journal? And there are many more examples of this. At this stage, there are several common problems that we encountered. First, we noted that there are many discrepancies in ISSN numbers assigned to each journal. Some journals have several ISSN numbers. Others have none. And there are other journals that change the title but not the ISSN, and so on. Another very common problem is that many journals have a Hebrew edition and an English one. The English edition might be a translation of all the Hebrew articles. It might be a translation of some of the articles. It could contain unique articles written in English, or it could be any combination of the above. For example, a title that we've worked on recently, Social Security, ביטחון סוציאלי, has an English edition which contains translations of selected articles from the Hebrew edition. As far as we know, the ISSN is identical to both Hebrew and English editions. For the time being, it has been decided to scan only the Hebrew edition of this journal. Later on in this project, it will be decided whether to include the English edition as well. These examples give a glimpse at the kind of problems we encounter while working on title histories. When the work on each title history is finished, the document is sent to JSTOR for revision and final approval. It may travel to JSTOR and back a few times until everybody is happy with the results. The next step is working on specific indexing guidelines, SIG, for each journal. We start to work on the journal SIG only after there's a signed contract between JSTOR and the publisher. As it takes a lot of time and effort, we do not prepare those guidelines in advance, and wait to be given a green light. Up to now, we have completed the 6 for 2 journals, Historia and Bitachon Sozial. We are now in the process of writing the 6th for the journal Iyun. Before we started writing the 6th, we went through an intense preparation period, and I mean intense. We performed an in-depth study of the contents and directions of the Hebrew Journal General Indexing Guideline, AJG 3.0. 208 pages of professional writing in English. Not an easy task for our Israeli team who labored over the gig pages trying to make sense of the methodically written directions. We then continued with JSTOR instructions on how to write the Hebrew Journal specific indexing guidelines. A short document of 42 pages that included specific guidelines and examples from each section of the SIG. It also contained terminology for specific pieces of metadata and tips for editing the documents and navigating through it. After reviewing all the relevant documentation, we began working on a journal SIG using JSTOR's template document. We then collect from our library the full background of the journal, and with it in front of us, we list the following information in the SIG. We start with the general information about the journal, title, publisher, ISSN, and languages. And then we list the underlying structure of the journal, of each journal. Here we note repeated elements within the journal, an uncommon feature that we encounter. The purpose of these notes is to draw the scanning agency's attention to certain elements in the journal and give instructions on how to treat them, keeping in mind that a scanned version of the journal should reflect its print form. Elements to be noted include titled groups of articles that appear repeatedly in the journal, book reviews, editor's notes, prefaces, and so on. At this point, we also have to decide whether a certain article is a research article, which is an article with substantive information related to the subject matter of a journal. Whether it is a book review, which is an article that has an evaluative review of a book or several books, or miscellaneous, which is an article that has no substantive information, such as introduction to issues, list of publications, cumulative indexes, editor's notes, and so on. And we make a note of it when needed. This work of writing the specific indexing guideline is done in order to specify elements in the journal that are not treated within the general indexing guidelines with the GIF, or are exceptions to the rules. Another aim of this work is to give instruction to the scanning agency. For this purpose, we go through the whole journal, each volume, each issue, and page by page, and mark the unusual elements. In order to write the SIG, we use a template document that was provided by Karen from JSTOR and proved to be very helpful. After completing the SIG, we asked for 2 sample issues to be submitted back to us for review before the actual scanning of the full journal. The specific indexing guidelines then is sent to JSTOR for review. After JSTOR approval, we prepare to send the journal to Apex for scanning. As the issues that we have at our library are heavily used and are not in prime condition, we prefer to get new issues from the publisher. If that is not possible, we will try to get better issues from the National Library, from other libraries in Israel, and as a last resort from our own collection. We collect all the available volumes from the publisher and follow a very precise list of instructions that specify how to pack, list, and ship the volumes to Apex. After the shipping of each journal, we take a long, deep breath and start again. Finally, I would like to end by making a note on the differences between JSTOR workflow and procedures and the Israeli workflows. Here in Israel, we tend to work in a creative way, intuitively solving problems they appear, and not obeying too much to rules, directions, and very precise and strict instructions. Working on this project, and the feedback we constantly receive from Karen, who is most probably wondering why we did not choose a different profession, requires us to think differently and act not so much intuitively, but within the boundaries of the need. We suspect that one of the unexpected results of this project will be that Karen and John will become fluent in Hebrew. Finally, I would like to thank Sharon, who's sitting here and has been doing a great job, to Yair, who is not here today, but is leading our group, to Pnina, who is the manager of the Haifa Library, and last but not least, to Kara Offenberg, I hope I pronounced it right, from JSTOR, whose patience and knowledge are to be admired.
I actually just want to say one word. First, we hope we haven't drained all creativity out of life. But the second thing I will say is that this is when JSTOR first started, we embarked on all this work in the same way, and all these same frustrations. I mean, all these same discoveries. I remember when we first started, we actually called Harvard to send the volumes to the scanning vendor. We went straight from the University Library with no preparation at all. And they came back, and we had all this complete mess. And we had like 15 people around the table, and it was just a complete and utter mess. And so it was through that process that, having to try to fix that we developed all these crazy, very specific guidelines. But I think the important, the librarians in the room will understand this, that if you don't do this kind of work in the front end, then you can't get access to the information. It's about metadata, it's about structure, it's about having, and the reason that there are 150 million Google referrals is not just that the full text is there, but because the structure of the documents on the web are consistent, and the robots can find the things in the way they expect. So it's miserable work in many respects, but I think it does really have a very quick staff. Yes. Oh, question.
Yeah, what happens to the copies that are scanned? Because for us, some of the original copies are only in private collections at this point.
They're dismantled and they're not returned to us. We lose them. So we try to use clean, fresh copies, but keeping in mind that it won't be returned to us. Okay?